Welcome to the Veterinary Financial Podcast, where we discuss financial freedom and professional success. I'm Meredith Jones, a veterinarian and financial planner for vets.
And I'm David Azis. I'm also a financial planner for vets.
For this episode, we wanted to talk about some of the worst advice that we've seen vets give each other. A lot of the examples that we're going to talk about, some of them come from just conversations we've had with veterinarians, whether they were clients or not. A lot of them also come from the Debt-Free Vets Facebook group, where a lot of veterinarians give a lot of good advice, but there is also some bad advice that I've seen vets give each other.
Meredith, are we really going to pick on vets today? They're already some of the most self-deprecating groups of people I've ever seen. Do we really need to pick on them? Actually, I'm going to answer that question. Yes, we're going to pick on you guys today. It's out of love, okay? And it's just to help protect you guys. And it makes good content. So if we can help you and be entertaining at the same time, don't take it personally. We want to help you guys.
Yeah, and I mean, to preface, a lot of this comes from tunnel vision. If something applies to me, it must apply to everyone. And that's where I see people make mistakes. Just because something is the right answer for me doesn't mean that it's going to be the right answer for someone who might live across the country, have kids or not have kids, whatever is different from you. Maybe they're in a different sector of vet med than you. Maybe they're married, maybe you're not, etc. So a lot of different situations that we can think of. The first one is actually the biggest one that I see, which is, I paid off my student loans and so should you. Quite literally, I did pay off my student loans, but I had a low debt to income ratio. I graduated back in 2008 when it was less expensive to go to vet school than it is today. But just because I paid off my student loans doesn't mean that it's going to be the best plan for everyone. And in fact, it is not the best plan for everyone. And that's what we help a lot of our clients with, right? Is figuring out what is going to be the best repayment strategy for them. What are your thoughts on the tunnel vision there, David?
Yeah, it's really easy, and we see it all the time. Someone who should pay off their student loans does. They get so excited about it, they just tell everyone to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a vet who graduated with in-state tuition might be different than someone who graduated from out-of-state tuition.
Yeah.
And they could be making the same exact money with the same amount of credit towards any potential forgiveness timeline, but just that difference alone could make the difference of optimal repayment strategy, for example. Not everyone should go for forgiveness, and not everyone should pay off their loans. It just depends. And some people get overexcited about their financial progress and start preaching that this must be best for everyone. There's actually plenty of cases where that person themselves is not doing the optimum strategy and still telling everybody to do that strategy. So just because it's optimum for you doesn't mean it's optimum for everyone. And also, funny enough, you yourself might need to triple check your own strategy anyway. So be very careful before telling that strategy to someone else and saying that they should objectively do it.
Right. Yeah. And I have seen that before, too, where it's like maybe they were not even contributing enough to retirement to get the match from their employer.
Yeah.
But they were paying off their student loans. I've seen that where it's like, okay, but maybe there were other things that you could have been doing with your finances while you were paying your loans off. Just because somebody has that strategy, paid their loans off, doesn't mean that they were really optimizing their finances in general.
And on optimization, here's one I've seen. This is actually a really common one that I've seen with multiple clients. Quote, I've heard everyone should put all their money in their Roth 401k. So should you. This is not only a thing that's different for everybody, but this could be different for you depending on 3 years from now versus 1 year from now version of you. This could change for yourself of whether you should do this or not, let alone what other people should do. So let me give an example. I have a client who met one time with a financial advisor shortly after graduating vet school. This client happened to be a payoff case too for their student loans. If you've been listening to the pod, you probably know that, hey, there is a student loan benefit to prioritizing pre-tax over Roth dollars, okay? So keep in mind for this person, they were going to pay off their student loans anyway. That benefit didn't matter to them. And so they were told by this financial advisor, who, I'm going to give him credit, wasn't wrong in saying you should prioritize your Roth 401k. Don't do pre-tax. Don't do traditional. Do Roth. And I would say that they're right in that recommendation because think about when you first graduate, you're only working, if you graduate vet school and you immediately start working in practice, you're working for about 6 months out of that year. Probably you're going to make less production your first 6 months than you would year 3.
Mm-hmm.
They're making the least amount of money that they will ever make realistically as a vet as their first job, and they're only going to be working half the year anyway. It's only a half year's worth of income on paper. So they could be making 130K out the gate, and their tax return would only show 70. So for this person, it totally made sense to prioritize their Roth 401k. For them, they'd be in like the 12% tax bracket. Their state tax, even in California, wouldn't be that bad. And their income's going up. Kind of a textbook case where they should probably prioritize Roth now because they will be in a higher tax bracket later. But they just kept on doing that. And then fast forward a couple years, when I meet them, they're like, isn't everyone supposed to do Roth 401k? Isn't that just better? Now they're in the 9.3% California bracket, and they're in the 24% going on 32% bracket, which is very different than when they were only paying 12% marginal taxes. So it's like, it depends. God forbid that person, I don't know if this person did this, but it's very common. If anybody had asked her along the way, she would have told all of her friends, do Roth 401k. It is better than pre-tax. It's like, well, I don't know. It was true for you at one point, but now it might not be. Again, she's a payoff case. What if she's talking to a vet who's going for forgiveness, who's already in those higher tax brackets? Roth 401k might not be the way to prioritize first. It's very common, but there's one I hear all the time is Roth always. It's not always.
It definitely depends. And some of that choice is also going to depend on personal preference as well. And so we go through a series of questions to figure that out. And some people end up saying, well, I'd rather have more dollars today to put toward family goals, etc. And maybe they choose more pre-tax. It just depends on what's important to you as well. So the next one, and this is another one that I see, unfortunately, all the time on the Debt Free Vets Facebook group. Someone says, well, I make $200,000 as a GP in New Jersey. You, other vet who lives in rural Alabama, you shouldn't accept any less than $200,000 when you're looking for a job.
Whoa. I guess I'm moving to Alabama if we can get 200K as a GP in Alabama. Sign me up.
Yeah, and nothing against anybody in New Jersey or Alabama, but some states and some cities, right, have a higher cost of living than others. $200,000 goes farther in some parts of the country than others. And of course, in some areas, there's no way that a vet's going to get paid $200,000 as a GP.
I'm just imagining the new grad asking all their friends who are a few years out, who live in New Jersey, California, whatever, hey, how much do you make? What should I negotiate for? And then they tell them how much they make. And then the new grad in Alabama is like, well, okay, here's my data points. And then they go ask for $200,000 to start as a new grad in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And the practice owners will just be like, no. And then you don't get the job. It's like, what? It could be pretty detrimental, this mistake.
And there are places where you can do research on how much vets are paid in your area. One of the best places to look is the AVMA puts out an economic report every year. It has salary data. It's usually toward the back of the report. So that's one good resource. Certainly, there are some other resources out there as well. And you can also just ask around and you can look at job offers or job ads, I should say. There's a lot of different ways that you can find that information.
Shout out to Travis. He put out an SLP Wealth email survey and it included a bunch of data on what the average vet makes in each state. what's funny about that is I'm not supposed to talk a lot about my wife on here because she gets mad when I do that. But she doesn't read any of the SLP Wealth newsletters that we send out, even though she's on the list. She just finds it boring and hates all that stuff. Straight to spam. Even her married filing separate tax return that she needed to sign, straight to spam, and I had to claw it out of spam. But she saw that survey of what vets make in different states and clicked on it so fast and shared it with people in her clinic. So yeah, go find that survey. The people who read it really enjoyed seeing the data. Yeah, go by data. Don't just go by someone's advice in a different state without thinking about it.
So you just mentioned that you guys filed married filing separately. So that brings us to the next one that's on my list. Next one is, okay, I filed my taxes married filing jointly, or I filed my taxes married filing separately, and so should you.
Ugh, just threw up.
By and large, you're probably not going to file your taxes married filing separately unless you have student loans. Someone will post on the Debt Free Vets Facebook group, and they'll just say, okay, well, I'm married and I have $250,000 in student debt. They don't mention their income. They don't mention their spouse's income. So no other information. Should I file my taxes married filing jointly or separately? And there are vets who will give advice and they will answer separately or jointly. David's going to throw up again.
Yeah, I just threw up a little bit. Could you imagine, like, as a vet, I know people ask you guys to do this all the time. Hey, my dog's sick. Tell me what to do, but don't do any blood work. Don't take any x-rays. No ultrasound, no rads, no nothing. Just, I want you to look at the dog and tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's exhibiting some sort of symptoms that could be 10 different things wrong with the animal. And you have to explain to them, I don't know what to do. I don't have x-ray vision. People want that quick, easy answer all the time. And I think it's the same for finances. And so people give advice of like, yeah, just always do joint or always do separate. There's plenty of times that I recommend to file separately. There's plenty of times I recommend to file jointly. It depends on what state you're in. It depends on what your income is. It depends on what your spouse's income is. It depends on if both of you have student loans or versus one of you have student loans. There's like 20 different variables and questions that I need to ask someone and then do math to give that recommendation. So if one of your colleagues just tells you, yeah, you should file separately, and they didn't spend 30 minutes doing math and asking questions, then I don't know, you're flipping a coin, I guess.
Bad advice. Yeah.
Probably bad advice.
Good way to get bad advice. We've got some more tax-related ones.
Oh, gosh, what do we got? Quote, don't do any relief work because you'll pay more in taxes.
Oh, ouch. Don't say that, David.
I've heard this so many times, like vets who... Now, again, if you are tired, overworked, making good money, maybe you need to work less. No pressure. Not everyone needs to do relief work. That is not what I'm saying. But there are vets who have told me they would like to do some relief work, but are afraid of the tax implications of doing it because how's the 1099 work? And they're going to have to pay more in taxes because of it. Let's back up. Yes, you will pay more in taxes because you made more money. And taxes, it's a percent of that additional money you made. So let's say you're in the highest possible tax bracket, in like the highest possible state tax bracket too, in California or whatever, and you're paying, let's say you're making $1 million a year, and that next $1,000 that you'd make by doing another relief shift, you're going to pay 50% taxes on it. Even if you fall into that category, $1,000 paid for a relief shift, I'm just rounding it, maybe you could make more, yeah, for sure, but let's just use $1,000 as an example. Yeah, if you go make $1,000 in relief pay, you would owe maybe about 50% taxes on that, which would still leave you with $500 more than you would if you didn't do the shift. Maybe that's not worth it to you, but you shouldn't be afraid of paying more taxes. You're only paying more taxes if you made more money. And so you're net going to have more money left over. And I think maybe it's because they think that it will impact the taxes paid on all the other income they make, but it's on the margin. You're not going to pay more in taxes on all your W-2 income because you went and made an extra $1,000.
It may be some confusion too, because I'm thinking of an analogy with human health insurance versus paying for everything out of pocket at the veterinarian.
Mm-hmm.
It feels to the pet owner like it's hurting their pocketbook, but they go to their human GP and they pay $20. It's kind of like that, where it's also like, okay, is it because you're used to, with your paychecks, having the money taken out up front versus having to think about, okay, I did this 1099 shift and I'm going to have to pay taxes out of the money that I made.
Because if you did a relief shift 1099, and many people don't think about that, how for a lot of places they won't withhold the tax.
Right.
So you get paid $1,000 for a relief shift in your 1099, $1,000 hit your bank account, and you feel great. And then you didn't pay quarterly taxes to the IRS along the way. You didn't know to do that. And then, because you should have, if it was like through your employer, they should have withheld $300 of taxes. So that should have been $700 hitting your bank account. They didn't do that. So, you go file your tax return and you owe an extra $300 in taxes that you weren't expecting. Multiply that times 20 relief shifts throughout the year. Oh my gosh, now you owe $6,000 more in taxes that you weren't expecting by the time you file your tax return. It doesn't mean you shouldn't have done the relief shift because you made less money. You still made more money. You just didn't know how withholding works and you had to pay the tax and you didn't expect it, and that's why. And so I would just say, know how taxes work. Don't be afraid of relieving just because you will pay more in taxes. You will still be left with more money. Now, if that more money isn't worth it to you, don't do the relieving. But it's just to say, do the actual math and know how taxes work. And that brings me to the next thing of like, people, quote, think bonus is taxed at a higher rate many times. And what I mean by this is a lot of people, let's go away from the relief example back to, let's say, an associate example where maybe you're on production. You will notice many times that when you get a big production check, a ton more tax is withheld.
Mm-hmm.
As a percent too, way more percent-wise withheld than you might be used to on your non-production paycheck. So what people end up thinking is that your production pay is somehow different than your salary.
Yeah, that it's taxed higher.
That the IRS treats bonus income or production income differently, and it's taxed at a higher rate. That is not true. This happened when I was paid commission, and my income would fluctuate and be high and low. And what happens when you get a big production check, and every payroll system is a little bit different, but most payroll systems, when you get a production check, and again, it's variable, it's never gonna be the same thing every time, that system thinks that you're getting paid that amount, the total amount you got paid, base plus production, for every single pay period. That you're going to make that throughout the rest of the year. And if you get paid 26 times and you get a production pay period where maybe your base pay for that 2 weeks gross should have been $5,000, and then you make $5,000 production from last month's production, and so you made $10,000 that one pay period for that 2 week pay, it's going to pretend that you are making $10,000 every 2 weeks, which is 10,000 times 20 weeks is 200,000 times 6 more weeks, because it's 26 weeks in a year. It's going to think you're making 260,000 or on track to make that. Someone who makes 260,000 will have to have more taxes withheld than someone who ends up making 180,000 by the end of the year. So because of weird payroll systems and its ability to not be able to predict the future and how much you will be making for your next 6 months worth of production, you end up getting many times more taxes withheld than maybe even needed from your pay. But then what happens if you don't adjust your withholdings customly? You get a bigger refund when you file taxes. So you get the money back. So you don't actually pay more. There's not this magical tax classification of production pay. it works just like your regular income. It's just the payroll system doesn't know how much you're going to make every production pay. So many times it will over withhold. It will withhold too much taxes, and that's why you might get a big refund next year. It's because it over withheld. I don't know why I get so worked up over that. It's just weird things that grind financial planners' gears.
Yeah. It's all going to be settled up at tax time.
Yeah.
You're either going to get a bigger refund because they withheld more, or you will owe less because they withheld more.
Exactly. And I think it grinds my gears because a lot of vets will be disincentivized to make more production because they think, oh, that's worth less than my base income. It's not.
Make your money.
Make your money. Make your money. Learn how taxes work. Make your money. I guess the bad advice component would be, what if a vet tells another vet that this is how production works, and then that other vet,
I've heard it,
just goes through life trying to minimize production because they think it's going to be taxed more than their base.
I've seen that before. I've seen people say that to each other. It definitely happens. So the next one, I want to hear what David thinks about this one. Maybe I shouldn't get a raise in my base salary, or if I'm salary only, maybe I shouldn't get a raise because I'm going to have a higher student loan payment if I get a raise.
Man, you're just trying to make me throw up a ton of times today. What the heck? Well, let's do the math on this. If an increase in pay eventually leads to a higher student loan payment, then I have to assume that this person, hypothetical person, is on an income-driven repayment plan. Otherwise, your student loan payment wouldn't change. But let's say you're on an income-driven repayment plan because that's what makes the most sense. And so you're afraid that your payment's going to go up if you make more money. So you're going to just not make more money. Well, let's do the math on that. It's kind of like being afraid to pay more taxes because you made more money, which is just every financial planner's biggest ick. Accountants probably hear that all the time. Let's actually do the math. So let's say you know that you can negotiate a $10,000 raise. I'm just going to pick one of the income-driven repayment plans. If you're on Pay, for example, or New IBR, the way those plans work is 10% of your next dollar will go into that future student loan payment. If you go make $10,000 more because you know that your employer will give it to you, well, 10% of that is $1,000. And that's $1,000 over the course of 12 months. So it would increase your payment by $83 a month in that example. If you know your employer was willing to give you a $10,000 raise, but you're afraid to do that because it will increase your student loan payments by $1,000, you were still left over with $9,000 more money. So it is still totally worth it.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to minimize your student loan as much as possible. Don't get me wrong. But don't minimize your payments by choosing to make less income. You will be left over with less money.
I've seen the flip side of that argument too. But I'd like to work less. Maybe somebody's on an income-driven repayment plan, but they'd like to work less for whatever reason. Family, not burning out. They're like, okay, but I've got this big student loan payment, but it's an income-driven or income-based repayment plan. So if you're making less, in a world where the applications are actually live and working, which currently they are not as we record this, but in a typical situation, you would be able to have your payment recalculated if you're making less. If making less money makes sense for your life, don't be afraid of that either.
Maybe we need to have another emergency student loan episode because the last one we recently did is already out of date. Don't get me started. But yeah, it's like if you are on an IDR plan and you're afraid to work less only because there's reasons why someone can't work less, right? Mm-hmm. There's plenty of reasons why you might have to work more. But if everything else in your financial life says, yeah, I could work less, but it's because of the student loan payment that you're choosing to not work less, and that's what you'd like to do, and you are on an IDR payment, it's like, well, hang on, your payment will change. What's that new payment going to be? Don't be afraid to work more because of taxes, but also don't be afraid to work less because of taxes and student loans. Do the math.
Do the math. So that's one takeaway. And the other takeaway would be that friends don't give friends financial advice, right? Or colleagues don't give colleagues financial advice. If you want to give someone advice, make sure that you are taking into account their situation and realizing that their situation might be vastly different from yours.
Could you imagine if your clients, even if it's a great client, even pretend it's a great client that you love, could you imagine if that client was so happy with the advice that you gave them that they just started to give vet med advice to all their friends with animals of what they should do when their friends' animals get sick? Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's so scary.
What?
That's so scary.
It's the same thing. So be careful when you hear advice from a friend or colleague. They could have gotten good advice themselves from a professional, but that doesn't mean you should take that person's advice. Just like, I shouldn't give medical advice to my friends about what they should do with their animals because my wife told me what we should do with ours.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should probably wrap this up before I throw up too much. I need to go eat something. Like I'm all out of stuff to throw up on,
Oh, no.
So with that being said, as Meredith said, friends don't give friends financial advice. But who should give financial advice? Us. I'm biased, of course. But hey, what if you could get fiduciary, veterinary-specific financial planning that's student loan aware that could change your life? Go to slpwealth.com/vet. That's slpwealth.com/vet for a free 15-minute intro call to see if we could be a good fit for you.
And until next time, take care and continue your path to financial success. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be considered individualized financial advice.
If a specific investment is mentioned, it should not be considered a recommendation or endorsement to buy or sell the investment.
All investments involve risk.
Past performance does not guarantee future results. You are encouraged to seek the advice of a financial professional before implementing any investment strategies discussed.
Yay, compliance.